So hi, welcome everyone to the immigration legal updates event that we're hosting virtually with the UNLV Immigration Clinic. My name is Nayeli. I am the resource coordinator for the Undocumented Student Program, and we also have Aubrey Maples, who's an attorney with the Immigration Clinic. Aubrey, you can go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can go into the topics that we want to cover today.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Aubrey Maples. I am the University Legal Services Fellow with the UNLV Immigration Clinic. And what that means is I serve the students of UNLV and College of Southern Nevada, faculty, staff, and their family. And family is defined as pretty loosely as one can define family. And my whole job is to help folks with their immigration matters. And that means I pretty much run, it's a general practice immigration clinic. Everything that comes across my desk, I mean, we are talking everything from defensive asylum and affirmative asylum to temporary protected status to adjustment of status for families and spouses and to DACA renewals. Pretty much anything and everything comes across my desk. So things one, I would like to encourage anybody who needs a consultation with me to reach out and sorry, someone walked in. To just reach out to our webpage, and there is an intake form for consultations. And shortly, I will be both at UNLV and at CSN campuses on a weekly basis. We're still working out the details of that, but you'll be able to come in for an in-person consult with an appointment. We do have to have appointments because otherwise I just couldn't get anything done. So there's a lot of folks who need help and I'm glad to help them. We just ask that you schedule an appointment, okay? So let's get started with the updates that we have. We're gonna start off with DACA today. Right now, initial DACA applications are still held up due to a ruling in Texas. And this Texas 2 ruling has all new DACA applications, they're called initial DACA applications, put on hold for the indefinite future. Right now, USCIS is still accepting the initial DACA applications, but they're not doing anything with them once they've accepted them. So they will take your money and put your application in a pile and let it sit. They're not giving any refunds either. So you would literally be letting the US government hold on to your money until whenever. There's not been a whole lot of progress on the rule changes to make things move forward on that. So right now, we are recommending folks not submit an initial DACA application. As hard as that is to hear, it's just right now and not in anybody's financial best interest to do so. We do recommend that you continue to keep track of your employers, keep track of where you've lived, so that once things change, hopefully they'll change soon. Once things change, we can then move forward really quickly and get a lot of those processed. So if you have the money now, save it, put it in a bank account, save it so that you can have access to it later when and if things change. As far as renewal DACA applications go, right now the turnaround that we're seeing is between 4 to 5 weeks. However, we're talking about USCIS and that can change without any notice. So we are still encouraging students to reach out. And here's the thing, for DACA renewals for the general public, there's a separate form on our webpage for DACA renewals. For UNLV and CSN students, we want you to use the ULS intake form so that you get priority handling, basically. There's still a little bit of a delay, but UNLV and CSN students get priority as far as DACA renewals go. And what happens for that is I send you a worksheet and I send you a client agreement. You fill both out, send them back to me. We have the information put into the forms. We send you another Zoom link. The Zoom link, we will go through your application and make sure everything's spelled correctly, that everything's correct. And we'll print it out. It'll be available at the UNLV at the law school for you to come in, sign, drop off your money order and your photos, and then we FedEx it for you. That way you don't have to pay for that either. That's just some of the benefits that UNLV students get, is we handle all of that for you. Once it's all packaged up and sent off, we send you a copy of the packet so that you have it for your records. It's redacted though. Your social security number is taken off of it and the metadata as well. just simply because I feel more comfortable sending that through the mail when it's unsecured like that. So we do ask that you make your appointment about 5 months in advance. That gives you time to get through that wait list and for you to be about on time to file. And we don't want your work authorization to expire while you're waiting for stuff to come back. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today, especially in terms of DACA holders, is your travel documents. I've had lots of people, I started in December, and I've had lots of people who've come to me saying, we want travel documents. That's called advanced parole. And they're DACA recipients. So DACA recipients can only receive advanced parole for one of 3 reasons. And most of the people who were coming to me weren't one of those 3 reasons. They wanted to go on vacation. While other people who have advanced parole can use advanced parole for vacations, DACA recipients cannot. It is literally somebody has to be very ill, dead, or dying. It's a work-related travel, in which case your employer will have to provide evidence of that, or it's education-related travel, those 3 reasons. The thing that is even if you're traveling for one of those 3 reasons, once you leave the country, you may not be allowed back in. And that's not something that anybody has any control over. And there's no appeal to that either. It's up to the discretion of the border crossing guard that you encounter on your way back across the border. That person could be having a really bad day and take it out on you, and there is nothing you can do. There's no way to get back across the country. There's no way to get back across the border using your advanced parole document once they've decided that they just don't want you in. So it's not a 0 risk game to leave the country, even with an advanced parole document. We can do things before you leave to help you get documents in order, to get your evidence in order, so that it increases your odds when you try to come back, that they'll let you back in. But it's really just up to their discretion. Now, if you are a DACA holder and you have one of these 3 reasons and you need advanced parole, contact me. We'll do what we can to get you an advanced parole document as quickly as possible. There was recently a lot of long, like year-long delays on getting advanced parole documents, but a recent court case in California kind of put a stop to that, and things are back about where they should be. It's still not going to be instantaneous, even with expedited processing. So try to plan ahead as much as possible. I know you can't do that for family emergencies. That's a case where we would have to try to do expedited processing, but again, there's no guarantee that that's something that we can do. Yeah, that was the big thing, is there was a lot of miscommunication about what advanced parole documents could do and what they couldn't do, and lots of folks were really disappointed. And when I would say things, well, like, I'm sorry, you're a DACA recipient, you can only leave the country for one of these 3 things, and they're like, well, but my friend, and I'm like, your friend's not a DACA recipient. I mean, your friend's got advanced parole for something else, and that has much broader permissions than what is allowed for a DACA recipient. Would you be willing to scroll up a little bit on the page for me? All right. So the first bit of legislative things that Nayeli asked me to speak with you guys about is the public charge of inadmissibility. This is a proposed rule change offered by the government, and this is where they're wanting to try to clarify exactly who would be determined to be a public charge. The old rule had a lot of layers to it, and it was really a very complex if this then that path to try to determine if somebody might be considered a public charge before we filed the documents. And so that was a waste of money to file these documents if you're going to be a public charge at the end of it all, and they're going to say that you're inadmissible. So there were a lot of workarounds to the old rule. One of them was an affidavit of support, or you could get a public bond for inadmissibility. But still, it was really a nightmare to try to determine what you're going to do, what you could possibly do, what you may do in the future that may or may not kick you out of the ability to adjust status later. So the new rule is supposed to try to clarify those things. And the reason that this rule is important is because, especially like during the pandemic, a lot of immigrants regardless of their status. A lot of immigrants refused medical care or access to SNAP benefits when they were entitled to them because they were worried that it would change their ability to adjust status later. And so that's what they call a chilling effect, where people don't access the benefits to which they're entitled or to which their children might be entitled in a mixed status household because they're scared of the later immigration consequences. And the reason it was a problem is because the previous rule was just written so poorly. Lots of people got caught up in that. And there was lots of research done that showed that, no, really, lots of people are just not accessing important things like medical care in the middle of a pandemic. And they're not accessing things like immunizations in the middle of a global pandemic because they're worried that it was going to impact their ability to adjust status. So the new rule is supposed to make things more clear. We'll see how that actually plays out because we are talking about USCIS. But that's their goal, is to try to make it more clear. Would you be willing to slide it up a little bit, please? So a public charge is ultimately someone who is primarily dependent on the government to provide for their basic needs. And what the government wants to do is say that people who are going to come into the United States and who are going to have to rely on their government to provide for their basic needs, we're talking like food, shelter, things like that. Well, we don't want them to come in because then that would just drain our resources. And that's problematic on lots of humanitarian reasons. But that's their goal. Part of this bill, as I was reading through it, it identified lots of groups to which this rule would not apply. So like people with green cards, people who are here as asylum seekers or who are refugees, certain groups that are patrol. I've listed them all and you guys can have a copy of this later. But mostly it will still impact people who are here whose status is irregular. And usually this occurs in a lot of DACA families where some folks have DACA, some folks have very irregular status, and some folks are US citizens. Those are what we call as mixed status families. The people who are in a mixed status family who are entitled to the benefits, use of those benefits is not going to affect anybody else's ability to adjust status later. So if you have, for example, minor children in a family who qualify for Medicaid because of a disability, their use of Medicaid is not going to affect mom or dad or brother or sister's ability to adjust status later, all right? And that's because they're US citizens and they're entitled to those benefits. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. Sometimes non-immigrants are entitled to use benefits. They're eligible to use benefits and they can receive those benefits. But by the very fact of using those benefits, it can then affect their ability to adjust status later. All right. It's not a one and done thing though. It's not like, I might be eligible for Medicaid right now because I'm pregnant. I use the Medicaid. That might be something for which it would knock me out of eligibility later. You can counteract that through a couple of different venues. You can use an affidavit of support. You can look at using a public charge bond, but really they look at what's called the totality of the circumstances. And that's very fancy lawyer speak of saying, we're going to put everything in the pot, we're going to shake it around and see what comes to the top. All right. So if you are fairly young, if you are fairly healthy, you are, in a stable family unit, you have some assets because you've worked, you've got a house, you've got money in the bank account, and you've paid for your college and you've got a college degree. But this one time when you were 18, you used Medicaid because you were pregnant. All of these other things outweigh that one use of Medicaid when you were 18. So in the totality of those circumstances, if you have an affidavit of support, if you everything else on the balance weighs in favor of you're not going to be a long-term beneficiary, public charge beneficiary, then it won't count. Does that make sense? but it's looking at the whole totality of the circumstances, and that's kind of a balancing test. And that's where your lawyer will come in, and they'll look at all of your things where, looking at your overall health, your education, all of that, versus what you used and when you used it and why you used it. And then we can craft an argument saying, based on the totality of the circumstances, so and so and so and so is not likely to be a public charge because, and then we can list the reasons standing in your favor. But that would be one of those situations where you need to have an immigration lawyer helping you out with that process. And that is something that we do here at University Legal Services. So we've got your back. Slide up just a little bit. I wanted to make sure that I hit everything. I did. Yeah, I thank you. The next one is the America. Slide down a little bit, please. Thank you. The next one is the American Competes Act of 2022. This is a House of Representatives bill that has not been passed by the Senate. And there's various projections on whether or not it will be passed, and we'll talk about those projections a little bit further down. But it still has a pretty weak projection, but it's not hopeless. And it would have some immigration provisions included. And this includes the ability of foreign entrepreneurs to come to the United States and invest in an American startup, help that company grow. And if it's really successful, it's a path to a green card. That's kind of a big deal, because usually immigrant entrepreneurs, they're limited in the number of visas that are available. This would help expand that number and also provide foreign talent the ability to invest in the American economy. Most importantly for the UNLV and CSN students is the prospect of immigrant visas for STEM PhDs. Of my new clients that I've had here since December, 2 of them are PhD students, and they are exceptional researchers and exceptionally qualified in their field, and in exciting sorts of ways. And so there's a way we can apply for what's called a national interest waiver, but this is again for PhD students. And it's a way to try to obtain a visa and then a further path to citizenship through a national interest waiver. But the criteria for a national interest waiver are really stringent. You have to publish like crazy. You have to have what's called a proposed endeavor about how you as an applicant can contribute to American society. And then you have to show that you've got the credentials to back that up. It's a bit of a process, but it is a path that we can explore. This particular provision, the immigrant visas for STEM PhDs, is much less stringent. Basically, you just have to have a PhD in the STEM field and be working in that STEM field, and it would be a way for you to get an immigrant visa and adjust status that way. So that, for me, is a really big deal. It's also asking for special status for Hong Kong residents and extending their temporary protective status, temporary protection. I can speak English, I'm sorry. By expanding their TPS or refugee status for 18 months after the bill is passed. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of power behind this bill at the moment. Hopefully it'll get picked up by some folks in the Senate and it'll get a lot more power behind it, because I think that just on the whole, this particular piece of legislation is very balanced. It's not necessarily something that one political party or the other could strenuously object to, because it does benefit the US economy as a whole, but it also has that nasty I word in there, immigration. And that's kind of a hot button topic right now. So we can hope. But this one I really kind of want to pass. The Adoptee Citizenship Act of 2021, this is a reiteration of a bill that has been proposed numerous times in both the Senate and the House for multiples of years. And what it's wanting to do is to help make folks who are adopted by US citizens become US citizens automatically without having to go through the process of adjusting status or doing a lot of expensive paperwork. It's not passed yet. The prospects for it aren't very good. And we can't really figure out why, to be honest. But I mean, the goal of it would be to eliminate some of the barriers, both cost and time-wise, for anybody who's adopted by a US citizen before they're 18 years old. Because they don't automatically require citizenship. Whereas if a child is born to a US citizen, that child gets US citizenship. So yeah, it's problematic. The Dignity Act, it was introduced in February, just recently, by Representative Maria Salazar in Florida to amend the INA to do a lot of different things. It's like 400 something pages worth of act. And so basically there's a lot of it that's talking about increasing border security, doing a lot of things to make crossing the border without inspection a lot more difficult. It's also talking about changing the way that we apply for asylum, which could have implications for people who have reached the border and want to apply for asylum. So that one's kind of problematic. But one of the positive parts about it is it's wanting to offer a path to citizenship for dreamers by having them stay in the United States, pay taxes for 5 years, and then pay a penalty. And this penalty would go to educating American workers. I mean, it's a whole thing, and it's very well thought out. And one would think they would have a lot of bipartisan support, but not yet. Representative Salazar is a Republican, so that makes this immigration bill even more surprising, because that's not a group that usually has comprehensive immigration reform policies. But this is buried in a very large bill that has a lot of stuff about border patrol and changing the way we do asylum. So it's kind of a which way are we going to go with that? But right now it has a 3% chance of passing. If you go to govtrack.us, I've got the link there. You can track a number of bills, any number of bills that come up in the House of Representatives or Congress. Okay, that was a very poor link. I'm sorry. If you go up to the top, all the way up, I can't see because the Zoom thing's in the way. Let me move this. Yeah, you can look up the bills. There you go. Start tracking, and then you can look up the bills and resolutions. That's right there, and go to find a bill, and then go down to your search query, or you can click immigration there. And then what I did was I came over here and I put Dignidad in the search box. And then that's how it came up. And then the prognosis there is on the side, and it tells you that it has the chance of being enacted. Sometimes these sites don't have like reputable statistics, but this is one source that I've used continuously for a while now, and they have the science behind what they're doing. So it seems to be a little bit more reputable than some of the other sites that are out there. And you can get alerts based on your topic of interest. And this will talk about, things that are being brought up in Congress, things that are being proposed in Congress, when something is actually enacted. And it's just ways for you to keep your thumb on the pulse of what's going on in Congress. Now, I have folks who are like, well, but I'm not a citizen, so I can't really do anything. And that's not necessarily true. If you go back, thank you, would you slide all the way up to there, the America Compete, no, oh, sorry, all the way up. no, well, I'm on a Mac. I'm sorry. I'm pointing right there. If you click on the link there that says Federal Register, you can submit a formal comment regardless of your immigration status. And this formal comment is a way that you can communicate directly with the Department of Homeland Security about how this particular bill will impact you and how this bill will impact your community. And if you go back one page, you can see where previous comments have been incorporated into, oh, sorry, there. Like, I guess it's about 3/4 to the way down. It's pretty extensive down. You can see where previous comments have been enacted into this version of the bill. And this is things where people were talking about how the chilling effect of not having clarity about what kind of things people can use without it affecting their immigration status, and how that reduces people's ability to access services in the middle of a pandemic, ultimately making the situation worse for lots of different people. That's the citations. I guess it's further up. I mean, you can look at it at your leisure. The whole point of the formal rulemaking process, which is what this is called, is for citizens and non-citizens alike, any interested party, any stakeholder, to have a voice in how rules are written and how they're enacted. And this would just be an opportunity for you to be able to share how this would impact you. It's okay to continue. Yeah, so some of the comments are useful, some of the comments are not useful. Some of the comments are submitted by private individuals, some of them are submitted by organizations. So for example, if you slide up, I saw one a little bit earlier, up. Just Neighbors, that is a organization, as opposed to some of the others, which are private individuals. And you don't have to discuss your immigration status when you leave this comment. But it is a way for you to share how things impact you and for you to have a voice in the government, even if you're not a citizen. The thing of it is your comment period is limited. Right now, the comment period for this particular proposed rule ends in 48 days. All right. Does anybody have questions? Pull up the chat so I can see. Okay, Nayeli, is that something you can do for Alfredo?
Yes, I can go ahead and write down email and I'll forward this to you.
Okay, perfect.
Any questions that we have?
Just in the interest of sharing, we have opened our community advocacy office, and it is located at 1212 South Casino Center Road Boulevard. I don't know. I'm still new to Las Vegas. I don't know. I still use Waze to get to work. But we do take appointments for UNLV and CSN students, and you can meet me here, you can meet me by Zoom, you can meet me at UNLV, you can meet me at one of the CSN camp. I mean, I'm pretty accessible, and I don't want inaccessibility to be a barrier for somebody to receive services. Like I said earlier, for those of you who may have dropped in later, if you just go to UNLV Immigration Clinic, the University of Legal Services has an intake webpage. Please sign in for the UNLV or CSN student, and that gives you some priority. But if you have community members who need support for DACA renewals, there's another intake page for them. And we are processing through that list as quickly as we can. In that vein, we are working with CSUN at UNLV to have an immigration fair. And we are working out the final details, so I can't share the details with you just yet. But we are looking at doing a DACA renewal fair and a naturalization clinic. And we are also working with other community vendors to have an immunization clinic and things like that all in one place. Or at least that's our goal. That's our goal. So if you know community representatives who would like to have maybe a table at this event, if you would be willing to just email me at uls@unlv.edu. That way we can reach out once we have plans a little bit more solidified, and then that way we can have folks present at the event. This event is not going to be limited to students. It's open to the community. During the pandemic, there were a lot of needs that were unmet in the community as far as immigration needs were concerned. And naturalization is one of them. DACA renewals is another one. Now, we can't provide funding for the DACA renewals, but it's my understanding that CSUN has a grant to help with some of that. And there may be some other community organizations that can help with that as well. I'm just still new to, like I said, Las Vegas. So I'm still trying to figure out what community resources are available, just so that we can make this process a little bit more equitable for everybody. So I am all aboard with this whole trying to figure out what all is out there. So if anybody has any ideas, I'm more than willing to leverage them all.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this information with us. It was all super important, and we're all about sharing our knowledge with our students so that, you know, they're aware of what bills are in action, what you know, DACA is, where it currently is at, and we want to make sure that just in general our community is informed. So I appreciate you and for giving us this time and all of this information. Please, to the students, stay involved with the Immigration Clinic. They are a great resource. They have wonderful staff, and they're super friendly and understanding and empathetic. So they are more than happy to work with you and assist you in whatever way they can. And they are free, so that is always a plus. And so we're also going to hopefully be collaborating with them for that immigration clinic, or not clinic, the DACA renewal clinic, along with CSUN. So definitely keep an eye on out for that announcement when it comes through. Yes, and like Aubrey said, for DACA renewal specifically, they don't pay for the renewal fee of the $495, but they don't charge you for any of the services that they do for the renewals. But yes, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and stop recording so that y'all can ask any questions if you wish.